All right, hey everybody. I'm coming to you here with Sheik Abdi Hersy and Simon Tesfamariam to talk about an issue that has been a hot topic in the last couple of weeks among the Somali community. And we have Sheik and Simon here to give us a little bit of context. So this is regarding Somaliland, which is a region that's not internationally recognized. It's a one-clan secessionist enclave in northern Somalia. Two things happened this month that seems to be moving towards the recognition of Somaliland as its own country, and both decisions came out of Ethiopia. So on January 18th, Somaliland President Musa Bihi Abdi was received in Addis by the Ethiopian finance minister. And then very recently, in the last few days, Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde promoted Said Mohammed from the consular in Somaliland to full ambassador. Sheik, I'm going to start with you. Why is this so offensive to Somalis, and why does it threat the unity of that country?
It's obvious. Thanks for having me, Hermali, and thank you for organizing this. And also, thank you and hi to Simon. This is offensive to every Somali person because it is against the sovereignty and the unity of the country. And there is no country in the whole world that accepts to be fragmented and divided. It is something that was not expected from Abiy Ahmed, especially this time. And it is, there's no base of the division of Somalia. There's no base other than clanism. Just to promote a clan. There is no such a thing that can divide us. We don't have two different religions. We don't have two different languages. We don't have different ethnicities. We are all one ethnic group. We've been already divided into 5 parts a long time ago by the colony. And Djibouti is a standing alone country. It was from us. And also part of Ethiopia and part of Kenya were Somalia. So the greater Somalia were divided into 5. And that is what the star with the 5 heads represents in our flag. So it offends everybody to see a neighboring country is meddling into our own local affairs, trying to recognize part of what is next, which region will be next, and what tribe will be next, and how many groups will be recognized from Somalia to follow the suit. So it is something that will end something called Somalia for good if this starts. And that's why it is offensive to every Somali unity-loving person anywhere in the world, including in Somaliland. So yes, it is offensive and it was not expected.
And just to give further context, so you say the large majority of Somalis actually do not support Somaliland being its own country or seceding. Just looking at some somewhat recent stats, the population for Somaliland is about 3 million. Somalia as a whole, including that, is about 18 million. So that just shows you the numbers. They're the minority in terms of that region. But even in that region, a lot of people don't actually support the secession of Somaliland, right?
Absolutely. It's only in the context of northern region, which is the state or self, semi-autonomous state, calls it itself as a separate country, called it Somaliland. It has 4 major tribes. Only one tribe supports the division. Only one tribe. The other 3 tribes are against it. The whole region of Audal, next to Djibouti and next to Ethiopia, is against it. Seoul people, the entire people in Seoul, except few politicians, are against it. Sanaag, they don't even have one small town that they control. It's completely under the Puntland local administration that's part of the greater Somalia, next to Somaliland. So if they get 20 to 30 to 40% of the population in northern area support this idea, is majority. It's like huge. They cannot get 30% of the people living in that area to accept and agree on separation and secession. The greater Somali people were 100% against it. 100%. We can never find one person in anywhere outside of Somaliland that will support the secessionism of Somaliland. So it's minority. It's like in Ethiopia, it's like Tigray trying to stand independently to become a country, or Afar region trying to become independent from Ethiopia, something like that. That's the context of the majority minority people that support this idea of Somaliland becoming an independent country.
Right. So, and I think it's important to reiterate, there's no foreign power at all that recognizes it. It's not just Somalis. Simon, I want to go to you for a little more context about some of the players in here, what we think the US or Eritrea actually thinks about these decisions, and some of the general issues of the way major decisions appear to be being made in the Horn.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's really important to understand that there's significant amount of interest in the Horn of Africa at this current time by many foreign powers, great powers, in what the U.S. calls great power competition. And so, as we've seen, China, Russia, the U.S., Turkey, we can go on and on. Other powers are interested in influencing the Horn of Africa. We can talk about the Gulf states as well too, Saudi, Emirates, Qatar. And so, right now, or recently, there was, Djibouti gave China a base in their country. And the thing is that Emirates then I should say that the U.S., obviously in great power conflict competition with China, has been looking to find some place, especially in the context of Horn of Africa cooperation, where there's Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia that are coming together. The U.S. is looking for some place where it can have as a reassurance that they'll have a continued base and presence in the Horn of Africa. And so it seems as though they're targeting Somaliland, is what they're saying, and specifically the port of Berbera. And we know this because there was the Heritage Foundation just recently published a paper by Joshua Messervy, I believe is his name. And in this paper, he argues that this very point, that we should recognize Somalia as the United States in exchange for a port, a base, excuse me.
Recognize Somaliland, right?
Yes.
Or, okay, not Somalia. Okay.
Yes, excuse me. Somaliland is recognize Somaliland, in exchange for a base there. And so at a time when we see increasing imperialism and basically Africa getting exploited by the U.S. ruling class and other powers, their allies, in cooperation with local proxies. That includes tribalists, clanists, or whatever, these different sectarian groups that they control and manipulate at the expense of the people of those lands. We have to be very careful about introducing these type of exploitative forces into the Horn of Africa. And this is very much part and parcel with the old school colonial mentality of divide and conquer. They've been doing it since the Roman times. The British did it. Bunch of the colonial powers, during the colonial era, modern era of Africa, in the scramble for Africa, they were doing the same thing. And so now we're seeing the United States take part in the same kind of thing. And so we have to be very careful as the citizens of the Horn of Africa who want this Horn of Africa alliance and cooperation to grow and expand and to be truly a place of collective peace, prosperity, and progress for everyone. We have to be careful about these divisive forces that are coming in, trying to divide us along clan lines, tribalist lines, religious lines, all these different types of sectarian lines. And they've created a security, a lack of security in these countries by destroying national armies, weakening national governments, doing regime change operations, and all these types of things to weaken states so that they're defenseless. Then they come in with AFRICOM, or they come in with, you know, like the French in in Francophone Africa at the current moment. They depend on these weak states. To then say, hey, we created, you know, we have the solution, but they don't say we created the problem. You know, we're the ones pushing the terrorists. I mean, we can go back to the UN report saying that the United States and TPLF were behind 80% of the arms to Al-Shabaab. You know, this is a known UN report. And so they create the problem and then they provide the solution. And the solution is never one that's going to be in the interest of the people of the Horn of Africa or Africa. So we have to be very careful when they come in and they say, we'd like to recognize this state. You know, we should be moving in the direction of growing cooperation where, in fact, the borders between our nations dissolve. But what we're doing is we're actually moving in the direction of creating smaller, more fragmented states. Think about the implications of creating a clan enclave within one country. What's to say that you mentioned Lasanod or Sanag or other, what's to say that another, they won't say, hey, you know what, we're going to create our own independent state. And, you know, the same thing in, you know, there's thousands of ethnic groups throughout Africa. There's even more clans. You know, what's to stop them from creating their own independent states? So this was resolved in 1964 during the Cairo Declaration with the OAU's, Organization of African Unity's Cairo Declaration in 1964, in which they said member states would get the right to, they would have borders as is the colonial borders that existed. So the question is, was Somaliland a colonial state? And was it a member state? And the argument is that no, there wasn't a time in which this was, was there ever a head of state, a Somali head of state there? Was there ever a constitution there? Was there ever, these things did not exist as the argument by many Somalis. And so the truth is that there were only two nations at that time that did not have that right. And that was the Eritreans and the Western Sahara. So Eritrea and Western Sahara did not have that right. And we know that they did have that right and that they should have been member states at that time because of the fact that this is what John Foster Dulles said. He said that, in the interest of basically in US geostrategic interest, we have to couple Eritrea with Ethiopia. And so this was something that was forced upon them, even knowing that what he said, from the point of justice, the Eritrean people should be able to have their independent right to self-determination. And so we know that that was supposed to be the case for Eritrea, for Western Sahara, but it was not the case with Somaliland. It was a protectorate. It was in a custodial system until we could figure out the next thing. So anyway, I'm not the expert on this, but and I believe that Sheik Abdi can really go in on this a lot more. But this is from a geostrategic perspective of these foreign powers coming in and exploiting the Horn of Africa. We have to be very careful and very wary of what this means, the implications of the recognition of new states in Africa along clan or any sectarian lines.
So this issue actually goes really far back. The Somaliland versus Somali, at some point they were together, and then in 1991, a rebel group declared that they were an independent state. What do you guys know, or what can you tell us about the timing of that? Was there foreign involvement that made that happen? It just stands out to me in 91 is also when TPLF came over and took over Abdi. Is there any connection to that?
Yeah, I believe from the get-go, TPLF were they were new to the power. It was closed time. TPLF were not even in power when the 91 Somalia government collapsed. they became government leadership later on. But since then, they were heavily involved. Mella Sanawi was, the brain behind supporting this Somalia division and dividing Somalia into 4.5 and separating them based on clan borderlines. So, and they can fit that. They wanted to be like 5 or 6 different states, and each one to find autonomy from the central government. The idea was a strong central government in Somalia is threat to the existence of the TPLF leadership in Ethiopia. So they wanted weak Somalia, and Somalia that's dependent on Ethiopia. And it worked until a few years ago, until they themselves lost the power, until Abiy Ahmed and President Farmajo of Somalia and Isaias of Eritrea met together and decided to create partnership and friendship and alliance. So from the get-go, it was always foreign interference that supported that idea. And only some politicians entertain the thing. And they use what happened between the government, the military government, former military government, and when people uprise against the government and they wanted the government to be changed and overthrown, the government fight back. And by fighting back, like Abiy Ahmed is doing in Tigray right now, they fight back to keep the unity, and they fight with the people, with the civilians. And there were atrocities everywhere in the country. It was not isolated only on the northern area. They were the second or third in line to fall for the government. There were states before them like Puntland and Galmudug. Those 2 regions right now are semi-autonomous regions under the federal government. They were also the victims. So they entertained this idea that they were targeted because of tribal whatever. That's complete false. It's an idea that few politicians are enriching themselves by being the leaders of that part. And in the greater context, yes, it is a foreign interventionist that made Somalia what it is right now. The 91 war that caused the whole Somali government to fall was fueled and supported by the US and other countries. It was fueled, it was a plain intervention. They wanted to do regime change, and the regime was very powerful. So it fight back, and the fight back created this chaotic moment in every corner of the country. What happened was like bomb explosion that touched every corner of the country. So yes, that was the trigger, and that was the case. And it doesn't fly with the Somali people. It does not fly. It's not an idea that's entertained by majority or even close to anything 30% of the people of Somalia, not even 20% of the people of Somalia entertain or want or will accept Somalia divided further. We are already being divided, and we cannot accept any more division. And in terms of what Simon was saying, we don't want divisions. We want unity. We want united Horn of Africa. We want, rather than creating more borders based on the clan basis or clan lines, we should create greater Horn of Africa. We can create the biggest economy. We have the people, we have the resources, we have the means. Why don't we have brains? What we're lacking right now is brains. Inside brains, people from us thinking inwards, not getting any information from outside or working Why are we serving Chinese or US or Russian interventionists or governments to come and exploit Africa? Why are we giving them, they are the colonies. The children of the colonies are getting, again, a bread from Horn of Africa. That should not be the case. So we need people that are thinking outside of their small boxes, outside of their small circles, personal, eagerness or personal greed, thinking greater, thinking for the greater Horn to prosper us together and to thrive together. And that's possible. It is possible. So this Somaliland thing is detrimental. It's a threat to the entire Horn of Africa to grow.
So that was my suspicion with the timing of the 1991. Essentially, the formation of Somaliland was through the same forces that kind of brought TPLF into power. So that's why it's deeply personal, right, to a lot of Somalis.
Absolutely.
One question for you, and then I want to go to Simon to react to some of that. Let's see if we get you back up here in just a second. So what was the Ethiopia government's response? It essentially said, and then I want to hear your interpretation of it, that this was a tactical decision. What's your reaction and the reaction of other Somalis to that response?
Specifically, which response?
So the Ethiopian government said they made that decision to promote the consular to ambassador as a way of sort of making sure they're not influenced by TPLF, right?
The excuses that we have received, some of them are not flying. The first they said the whole reason inviting Musa Bihi Abdi to Ethiopia is to speak with him about possibility of TPLF regrouping in Somaliland. Coming through the ports, there are individuals in the exile with army and money and all that stuff, specifically in Sudan. And they are exploring ways of coming back and getting a base somewhere in the Horn where they can regroup, and like they did in Mogadishu a long time ago in Somalia when Somali government was anti-Ethiopia, and they were given recognition, complete recognition, and they were given camps where they can train their troops and all that stuff, and logistics and money and army and weapons and all that stuff. They were thinking about that. So they told us it is to warn and inform the Somaliland leadership not to engage with those kind of activities. But that was, and few days later, they released a statement saying we don't recognize Somaliland. Somaliland is part of Somalia. We treat them as other regions of Somalia, as other federal member states of Somalia. And in few days later, the promotion of the head of consulate or liaison or whatever envoy you call him to become a full ambassador. They have full ambassador in Mogadishu. So what is this other full ambassador is? And when we asked them, they said, oh, it's sometimes we promote at least three Somali people in Ethiopia. We promote them every year or every few years. So it was just general, okay. So is he going to be transferred to another country where he can be an ambassador, or he is going to be ambassador in Mogadishu and you're going to take the other one, or what's going on? It's conflicting information coming from Abiy Ahmed's management or administration in regards to Somaliland. We don't know what he is doing. We know Musa Bihi Abdi and his group are trying to knock every door. And there are lobbyists in the US working for the Somaliland trying to bring Musa Bihi Abdi on March, this coming March, to the United States, and to make possible that he meets with the politicians in the some of the politicians in the U.S. And there are some activities going on in the Senate and in the House of Representatives in the U.S. regarding to Somaliland. And also those articles are being published saying America is exploring and trying to, to have a camp or base in Berbera, military base. So this is, we don't understand what's going on with Abiy Ahmed. All we see is conflicting information. Is he really leaning towards recognizing Somaliland, or he is honest about the statement that they released a few days before they promoted the ambassador, that they don't recognize Somaliland as an independent country? It's part of Somalia. We don't know. It's confusing, and this is really, it's not helping anyone.
Yeah, I think that those are some of the common themes in terms of mixed messaging, even when it comes to other issues or other decisions that were made in Ethiopia. It's people don't feel like they know what's going on. What does this really signal? Simon, I want to come to you about this. So the communication issue within the Ethiopian government is an ongoing conversation. Could they give people more of a heads up? Could they explain certain decisions better so people are not fearful and thinking this is a signal of regression back to divisive politics? And then the larger question is just, is it that these are regressive decisions, or are they strategic decisions like the statement the Ethiopian government made? What do you see in as it relates to the decisions and why they might be made?
So I think, you have in the Horn of Africa, these are all independent states, right? And they have the right as independent states to negotiate with whomever, whenever. And so as the people of the Horn of Africa who want cooperation within the Horn of Africa, between the different states, this is we are a people-based movement. We are building connections between people, but as independent states, they have that right. And so if Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Prosperity Party, they want to negotiate with the US, I'm as an Eritrean, I can only I can talk about Eritrea, and I think that it's not my intent to interfere in the internal relations of the Ethiopian state. This is the prerogative of the Ethiopian government. But at the same time, we also have to consider that we need, as the people of the Horn of Africa, since we have the desire to cooperate and work with one another and to maintain collective security and think about like our collective futures together, because united we stand, divided we fall. We know this. And so if we begin to pursue a policy of throw some country under the bus, or, dog eat dog type of mentality, or, something where, you lift yourself up at the expense of another state, then what we have is a very dangerous situation for the future, especially if it's along sectarian lines, because that will spill over into your country. So you may do it today, but tomorrow, what happens? And so my hope is, is that Prime Minister Abiy is thinking of the best interests of the Ethiopian people. And when we're talking about within the framework of the cooperation of the Horn of Africa states, that seeing how that having harmony in the Horn of Africa with the states in the Horn of Africa, that will also lead to peace in Ethiopia as well too. Because if your neighboring countries are on fire, that fire, it's only a matter of time before it's going to come to you and consume you. And so you framed the question to Sheikh Abdi as a tactical sort of thing. And this may very much be the case. And, you know, there have been times where he said one thing and meant another or did another. And, you know, every political leader has their own individual style of doing things. And Abiy has so far established his own. So, you know, we don't want to discount it, because even though we may not agree with the methods or all that, we understand that he may have his way, and so we have to respect that. But at the same time, again, we have to be very careful about the prospects of throwing nations under the bus. And so you mentioned communication. Now I had to kind of go into that to kind of bring us to the communication part. If he gives us the entire program about like what's going to happen, you know, that can compromise the actual process by just saying, oh, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And sometimes, you know, the United States may not need to know that. If you put that out there, that's a message to the United States inevitably. So, so we don't want to interfere in that process. But at the same time, when we hear, and this is from indirect channels, that there's zero cooperation with the Eritrean state, with the Somali state, it's just totally in the shadows. You know, does that sound like cooperation? You know, we have to think about that. And so when we're talking about now, if we, you know, we haven't talked about no more yet, but I don't know if we want to do that, but that's a different position. We're not a government, you know, and we may have a different position on how we envision the Horn of Africa than like a specific leader. So, so we can talk about that. But my main point though is that we understand why they may not give all the peoples the information about what's coming, right? But you can't have total darkness, and you can't have states that are actively involved in fighting the conspiracies by the US, which is in your interest, to then just throw them potentially, I'm not saying that's happening, potentially under the bus is a very scary prospect. And so we have to, as the people, resist that potential without undermining the leadership in their ability to defeat US imperialism. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what the legalities are in terms of declaring a state or a region an actual country. I mean, if I was looking into it, and the UN has a lot of pull in that, although if one of the 5 what do you call it, member states reject it, then it gets voted out. But I guess if they all got on the same page, UK, you know, Russia, China, France, and the US, then it could actually become its own independent state. Does Ethiopia recognizing, you know, the consulate as an ambassador, or upgrading it, does that really have any influence? Or I guess, is that the fear that you're basically co-signing the pathway for Somaliland to be considered its own country? Sheik, I'll give that to you.
Yeah, Ethiopia is one of those countries that can support or promote the division of Somalia or fragmenting Somalia. But I agree with Simon. We respect his interest, and every country has its own interest, and he can seek his interest, but his interest cannot be achieved in the expense of the interest of other neighboring state. Somalia is an independent country to Abiy Ahmed. Abiy Ahmed should respect Somalia and its affairs as one, and has to stay out of it. If he wants prosperous Horn, collaborative Horn, he should respect. He should show the mutual respect and mutual interest. Where we can share interests, we can talk about it. When we have separate interests, every state should seek their interest without the expense of the other state, period. Secondly, they have to have a clear vision, and the message and the communication should not be mixed and confusing messages or conflicting messages that are coming from them. It's not helping also. And we cannot be silent. As Somalians, we believe and see that Ethiopia or Ethiopian leadership right now is creating a hostile environment between us and by doing those things, we can expect tic-tac-toes. It was the worst time, by the way. Worst time to do these things is the time that Somalia is in the middle of elections. You don't kick your friend when they are in their weakest state. Somalia is busy into getting a mandate or government with a mandate, and they don't have energy and power to focus on other things. Right now, their energy is all focused on coming out of election. We are in election period, and this is not the time that friends kick each other. So also, you know, if you have bigger picture for your country, you cannot keep the, as Simon said eloquently, you cannot keep your friends in the shadow by not knowing nothing. And I know from Somali perspective, we don't know what's going on with Abiy Ahmed. We don't know where he's going. Is he really fighting with TPLF, or it was all acting? What about all these people died? What is going on? Is he regrouping with TPLF, which he was part of before they fight? So I don't know. We're confused on his actions. We are scared of his tactics, and this will create that Somalis also organize ideas, detrimental or ideas against Horn of Africa alliance. We can see Ethiopia as a hostile state, and that was the case for many years, and none benefited from that hostility. And we should not go back to that. We should go forward and leave each other alone. At least leave each other alone. Let everyone deal with his internal affairs. If we don't, when Abiy Ahmed was fighting with Tigray, and Tigray were advancing, Somalia fired a foreign minister because of a statement that he said about that war. That's what friends do. That's what friends.
It's interesting. Certainly the timing of decisions has been an ongoing issue. When the 8 prisoners were released in Ethiopia, the diaspora had just come back. A rally was happening in the next few days. So even people that were okay with the releases thought, why did it have to be a couple of days before the rally, right? And so you bringing up that this is happening in the middle of elections in Somalia is another interesting question of timing. And I see very much similar themes in all the countries in the Horn in terms of questioning certain decisions, feeling confused, an incredible amount of skepticism, if I may say so myself. I mean, just a month ago, everybody was sort of on the same page, felt really good about the direction. And now there's this fear of total reversal of certain policies. So Simon, I want to pose this question to you, because whether or not these decisions ultimately make the Horn of Africa stronger, there is in the process this disunity or questions and infighting and that's happening nonetheless, whether it sticks around or not. So how can we talk about these concerns and issues and still maintain the unity among the people?
It's a good question. I think we have to have hard discussions. We should we should definitely be honest about what we see in front of us and our interpretation of these things, and not hide them. I think that we should be sensitive. We should be compassionate. We should be very, empathetic, because of the fact that, this entire region has, is emerging from the onslaught of US imperialism and Western imperialism. in collaboration with its local proxies that have used sectarian politics to divide us and make us say, you know, this flag, no, this flag, or this border, or this, that, and all these different divisions. And so we have different understandings of history and who did what leaders did, you know, were involved, and all these kinds of things. And so this plays into today's politics, and people are very sensitive because of the divisions that have been created. So we may hold some biases and some, you know, misunderstandings that don't gel so well with other people's, you know, views. And so we have to be very careful in how we explain these things. And so Twitter, unfortunately, is a space where kind of the most loud and vocal kind of personalities who, you know, who are really the most like alarmist, have like prominence. And some of these people are saying the correct things, you know, they're right. But sometimes things are done in an irresponsible way. So I think, you know, being very careful and patient and kind and considerate and compassionate, I think these are things that should describe how our conversations need to be. But I also think that, you know, again, we cannot hide things. We have to be honest and upfront, you know, about, you know, what's going on. If we see something wrong, call it out. And so, you know, mask no lies, you know. And so I really do believe we have to move in more long form, you know, way of thinking. So like express our ideas in like written form. I think written form is very important, or discussions like these, you know, like this is very important type of discussion. And so people right now are learning, you know, we're sharing information. How many people in Ethiopia and Eritrea honestly know about the true situation about, you know, the Somaliland protectorate and the history and what's going on, all the details, you know? We have very complex histories that are not being told. And so anyway, this is very useful. I think this is one of those type of platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I mean, Twitter is so limiting. You can't get more than one idea, maybe two in one tweet. And it's just like designed for emotional expression and not so much nuance. So which is part of why we're having discussions like this. Go ahead, Simon.
And I also want to say that, you know, the thing about Twitter is that there's a lot of virtue signaling that also goes on, or doing things to gain influence, you know? You can do that in other mediums, but it's taken to like an extreme on platforms like Twitter, where you're getting a dopamine shot off of a like and a retweet or whatever. And so people are more likely to say those things that will, you know, increase their popularity. And so we have to be very careful about this being a genuine representation of truth. There's ego that's involved in it. You know, there's deception and personal gain for people in this. So it's just, it can be very toxic.
Yeah, for sure. I think it works when you have a very black and white situation, but when you have more nuanced discussions, it just really does not, it's not a platform for that. Sheik, we'll end with you. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you think is worth adding?
I believe we have to calm down in terms of what do we do. We have to calm down, and we have to give the process to take its place. I think, as Simon said, we have to tell the truth. We cannot mask wrongdoing. Anybody who does anything wrong to the unity or the advocacy of greater unity between the Horn of Africa countries should be called out. And also we should pinpoint the Western imperialism tactics, divide and rule, all the time. We have to stay vigilant and stay strong, and we have to advocate for the dream, the bigger dream. If Abiy Ahmed and the other three, those three guys are not capable of taking us to there, we should not be despaired. We should think after them, the leaders that will come after them. and we have to have a long-term, idea or dream that one day, remember, Martin Luther King was dreaming in the middle of segregation, that one day, two different color boys will be together, talking to each other and helping each other and assisting each other and becoming friends. Whites and blacks are becoming friends. That was a wild dream. It came not long ago, not long later is what I mean. So there's always a hope. We should keep the hope. We should keep the energy of uniting our youth. They are the future. The future is here. And the days of imperialism are numbered, especially in Horn of Africa. What happened in Burkina Faso and in Mali is a great example for people revolting and rejecting the idea of foreign influence. So we should just keep the upbeat. Also, at the same time, we don't mask any wrongdoings. We don't hide any truth. We call out anyone who is detrimental to the unity, and we give the process. We're just shaping a grassroots movement, and mission is to keep Africa free, to save those countries that are in the brink of collapse, to call out every interference from outside. We can have our own ideas, even if they are wrong. Even if they are wrong, our ideas are better than any outside or foreign ideas. We should all be united, but we cannot do lipstick. If we hide the truth, we will be seen irrelevant, or maybe shallow-minded, or that we don't have no idea of what's going on, or we are being completely duped by outside influence. This is just grassroots movement. We're feeling it, we're dreaming it, and we have to be able to dream it and feel it. And anything that comes in the road is just a roadblock. We will move beyond that point, and we should call out anyone who is trying to stop us from getting the Horn of Africa united and prosperous and together and collaborative part of the world.
Love it. Wise advice. Stay upbeat, stay calm, but also be honest and have more conversations like this, which is what we've been talking about. We really need to have a long form space to be able to dissect some of these ideas, because we've kind of been letting Twitter do the work and it has not worked out at all. It's a marriage, right, with the Horn of Africa countries. So that means there's going to be a lot of navigating, working on communication, compromising, all that stuff. So to both of your points, it's a long-term relationship. And then before we wrap up, Simon, there's something you really want to say, so I'm going to end it with you.
Yeah. No, I was actually, both of us were kind of, referring to Amilcar Cabral when he was saying, tell no lies, claim no easy victory, and don't mask the difficulties, all that kind of stuff, and so I would encourage everyone to go and read Cabral, because this is a time when we have to be honest, and so I just really wanted to put that in there, because when we're talking about growing our movement of the Horn of Africa, of No More, and everything that's going on, we have to go back and look at those who have done this before us. And so those very famous Pan-Africanists with those big ideas, we've got to read up and do our studies. So in addition to the long form stuff, just wanted
That's a good button. Tell no lies, claim no easy victory. So we'll end it with that. Thank you guys so much for having this discussion with me. Until next time. See you later.